Hello and a beautiful evening to you, wherever you're joining us. We could say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, whatever the time zone you're affiliated with is. My name is Yusuf Abdelbari, and this is NFINITALKS. Ladies and gentlemen, I happen to be the moderator of today's talk, and our live today is with one of the most famous digital media experts in the world. Now, before we go thoroughly into the introductions, let us tell you why should you stay with us here on NFINITALKS. If your interest is about the world of digital media, anything that revolves around data, this is where you want to be. Let's say you started something on social media, on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok. You need some essentials and you need some 101s. They are the essentials of turning data and content into a story, content creation in particular. And if you want to understand the 101s of viralism, of how something could go viral, our guest today on NFINITALKS is going to give you the 101s and basics of how to get from point A, not to B, but to Z. My name is Yusuf Abdelbari, and it is my pleasure to be your moderator for this promising evening. Now, let's get on ahead with some introduction. Our guest today and our talk is with one of the most famous digital media experts in the world. He is the founder of SiteLogic Marketing in the United States of America and an educator at the New Media Academy in Dubai, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we're about to be sending a request, I believe. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome together, Mr. Matt Bailey. Mr. Matt Bailey.
Hello, Yusuf. How are you doing today?
I am very well. Quite frankly, it's a promising day. The sun has set, but it is quite bright here by having you as a guest. How is your day so far?
Well, it's pretty much just started, but, I usually get up early because I love what I do, so I'm excited to start.
Everybody loves an early bird, and you got to be one to get the worm. Now, Mr. Matt, if you allow me, I'd like to go with some introductions for our distinguished audience.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Matt Bailey is a trainer. He is an IT and marketing expert and an educator at heart. What he teaches is he teaches people on how to turn marketing data into action. In other words, he shows how to find story in the data and effectively communicate that story. Now, since the year 2002, Matt has worked with hundreds of companies and conducted several conferences and workshops like IBM, Google, and Microsoft, etc. Now, he is one of the highest rated speakers for his ability to communicate complex information in a practical way. You can find more, ladies and gentlemen, because the list goes on. More about Mr. Matt Bailey on SiteLogic.com. Write it down on your hand if you don't trust your head. With that, Mr. Matt, let us get on with the first question. And we've got quite the wonderful handpicked questions here. Now, data is crucial for all marketers. Let's kick off the conversation with you telling us what we don't know about the importance of data in digital marketing, and who do you think is the king? In other words, let's picture a king and a horse. The horse takes the king into the battle. The king is on the horse and leads the charge. Who is the king and who is the horse? Tell us about data and content, please.
That is a great question. I have not heard it put like that before, but that is a great question. That is so very difficult to answer. The main reason is, and I saw this study a couple of months ago, of content gets no engagement. And so while some may say, yeah, it's content is king, content is what we need to do, you need data to know which content is working for you, which content is not working for you, and then to analyze why. What is it that people like? What don't they like? Because that will change then how you do the content. And so, you know, deciding which one's the king, which one's a horse, that's a little difficult. I mean, I love the analysis, I love the data, but yet that just guides our marketing. It guides how we approach audiences. So to assign one a specific role, I think it depends on what you're doing.
I understand. All right, let me go to another corner of this picture here. Mr. Matt, with all the ad blockers, and I gotta say I love ad blockers. I'm not a big fan of ads when it comes to watching something that I'd like to watch. The ads kind of get on the way. Ad blockers are out there. And the new announcements from Google that came out to stop using tracking cookies on Chrome in 2022, in addition to the new feature from Apple to turn off data collection and tracking. Now, I'd like you to tell us how do you think the advertising industry will be affected, and what would be the challenges of the marketers to overpass it? I mean, I myself have my own YouTube channel. Let's speak in that analogy. And once it grows to the appropriate number of subscribers, I'm considering using Google Ads. In 2022, are they not going to be sufficient enough to generate the traffic I'm looking forward to? How could you elaborate?
Oh, they will be able to. There's no doubt about that. If there's one thing Google has, it's users. They will dominate the ad industry for many years. So losing cookies is really just a method of tracking users, their behavior and what sites they visit, and building a profile about them. Losing that ability is not going to drastically change the ad market. And let me say it this way. I like the privacy steps that are being taken. I like what Apple is doing. Google, they said they were going to get rid of cookies now, but they blinked and they pushed it back. The issue is that programmatic advertising to people based on third-party cookies and based on profiles, I think it has made our industry a bit lazy and really confusing. And we get back to the data question, because people have confused impressions with results. And impressions do not mean that you've made sales. It doesn't mean you've extended your brand. And so I think this will help our industry, because we're going to get back to real marketing basics. And that is, what's your brand? What's your message? Who's your audience? And do a better job of finding them and communicating to them, rather than just trying to identify this audience based on third-party data, which a lot of times is not that accurate. So I think, you know, the advertising industry survived prior to third-party cookies 10, 15, 20 years ago. It did just fine. However, when we started using third-party cookies, programmatic ads, trust in advertising has gone down. And I think a lot of that is because of the data collection and the breaches of privacy and all those issues. So I think this is a good thing. I don't think it's going to reduce the amount of people that see your ads on your videos and click on them, because they're going to be watching your videos because of you and your content. And that is going to provide the results.
Mr. Matt, I'm sorry, before I move on to the next question, but is it correct that I could elaborate or conclude from the answer you just gave me that the disappearance of cookies and data collection do you think this will have some companies that have some certain marketing campaigns resolved to, other than going to an automated service, perhaps relying on the one-on-ones and basics of data collection, and therefore this would offer more jobs in some certain industries?
I think it could. I think one of the results is going to be, is your large advertisers, the best thing they can do is go build a one-on-one relationship with a publisher. And that way, I know my ads are being seen by real humans. Because one of the problems with third-party cookies and the current system is ad fraud. We have millions of ads being shown to non-humans, bots. So I think the job incredible because there is a craving for good quality content, and it takes humans to make that happen. And so I think the future of the industry is in great hands, regardless of where the cookie issue is and the privacy issues. It's going to force us to be better and more human in our approach to marketing.
Mr. Matt, now with the next question, we reach halfway. Now you have been, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been involved closely with the digital marketing practices in the MENA region. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, have you spotted any differences between the marketing approach between the United States and in the US in general and the Middle East?
Yeah, there's been a substantial difference, and it has a lot to do with history. So, and I'll give you an example. So my history is, I can go all the way back to the early 90s. When I was growing up, my father brought home a real nerd. I like that. So, and it was a PC, but it wasn't until years later then that we had the internet. And so about the mid-90s, we have the internet, we have PCs, and then we start seeing a growth in websites, and it explodes from there. So in America, and I would say a lot of Western countries, when we think of internet, we think of PCs. We think of browsers and websites. Now, when the further east I go, in the UAE, when I go into China and some of these other countries, the evolution of internet and device has been very different. So in the UAE, when I talk about internet, what people think about first is mobile and social. They think about, because most people, I think, have accessed the internet first on their mobile device. And whenever I talk about internet marketing, most people think about, we tend to think websites first and PCs. And so there's a different approach as to where people start with their thinking, and it affects their campaigns and then how they develop from there.
Mr. Matt, I'd like to have another branch in this question and extend it a little bit by bringing up an example. When we talk about the marketing experience between one region and another, this NFINITALKS is brought by Infinity 8, which is led by a management that is patented with artificial intelligence, and it employs them in the digital marketing and advertising solutions campaign they offer. Now, how much does the involvement of the of the AI element create a substantial experience in digital marketing?
It's going to change a lot, and especially from the data processing part, because what AI is very good at is finding patterns in large amounts of data. And so even if we don't have third-party cookies and third-party data, we have a lot of first-party data, customer data, and AI is going to find the patterns. They're going to find, you may be dealing with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of records. And so I like to say that AI does the job of 1 million interns, because we're not going to sit down and go through every one of those records, but AI will. And in doing so, they find those patterns, and that will lead to better customer insights. That will lead to understanding, here are some things that this group of people tend to respond to. And now we can develop better content, better focus, and a better direction when we approach a certain group of people because of the factors that they have displayed.
Mr. Matt, I want to talk about marketing, but hear me out in this unusual way of phrasing the question. You see,
All
you
right.
go everywhere and you hear, you hear suggestions about the ultimate platform to marketing. You go into a movie theater, the best marketing ever. People will always see your ad, and there has been a lot of responses and studies. Now, all right, to each one their cup of coffee. But from what I hear, that your favorite channel is email marketing. And I'm like, what? I mean, I don't know. How do you find it a very powerful medium? I, for a person, would never check my email unless I was expecting something or someone told me sending something. If I see an ad, before I think about, all right, this ad falls in the criteria of my interests, this might be a malware, it could be a virus. How could you see it as a medium for advertising?
All right. Again, I think this has a lot of cultural differences as well. Because again, when our primary device was PC and email was one of the, email actually predates, the modern internet. It predates a lot of technology and platforms. And so there's that aspect where if you grew up using it, you trust it more. Now, I will say I love email because as a loyalty and customer engagement platform, I love it because my message is received. If I post on social media, I don't know that everyone who follows me on social media gets my post or is able to read it, because every platform wants me to advertise, and that's the way that they make money. And only then will I reach more people. I'll never reach my entire social media followers through using a third-party platform. With email, I have deliverability, and I can improve my deliverability, and about 99 to 100% of my subscribers will see my email. Another aspect is that nobody owns email. And so there's never going to be a platform shift that changes how we send it or the cost of sending or anything like that. So it's not an owned platform by someone who's trying to monetize. So it's reliable. Now, I will say this. If I were to say my best top channel, it would be search, because everybody searches. It's a second behavior that we're all exhibiting now. And search is the number one source of new customers, and it's the number one source of profitable customers over a long term. So I love search as a way of getting new customers. But when it comes to communicating to those customers, I love email because it's direct, it's one-on-one, and I can personalize it based on the interactions that we've had.
I completely agree. I mean, search is such a vast medium, but I can relate in the criteria of applications. Whenever I was looking for an app, I didn't know the name, but I knew the functionalities. I would just type it down. I've always seen an app that comes up and it's actually an ad of an app. And 7 out of 10, it actually worked. It was exactly what I was looking for. So kudos for you, Mr. Matt. Now, let's go to our next question. Probably the last, but if it allows, we can add one if you allow it, Mr. Matt.
Sure.
For many experts, the hardest plan in digital marketing analytics, it is digital marketing analytics. But do you have any quick tips, Mr. Matt, for our viewers on this topic to make their lives a little bit easier?
Yes. Number one, what do you want to do? Define the question. What is it? And here's where the better question you ask will enable you to do better analytics. So if my question is, are people engaging with my content? Now, I need to figure out, well, how do I define engagement? What do I want them to do? Am I measuring their behavior, or am I measuring how they react? So it starts with defining a very clear question of what I'm trying to accomplish. And that's as simple as, what are my goals? What am I trying to do? When you define that question, it then leads you to then know, well, here's the data I would need to answer that question. So now we're defining what data. what is it that I need that will answer this question? And depending upon if you're at an agency or if you're at a company, that may require you to put your goal in monetary terms. That I did this campaign, it generated this amount of business. So now that defines what kind of data you need. Now that you've defined what data you need to go get it. And that I find makes analytics a lot easier when you can open up, let's say Google Analytics. Well, now I know what I need. I can basically find where it is if I'm familiar with the interface. And there I tell people it's Google Analytics is I call it the ABCs. It's A for acquisition. Where did people come from? B for behavior. What did they see? What did they do? And C is conversion. How much was it worth? Did they do what I wanted them to do, and did it make money, or did it create value? And if I follow that pattern, I know what I need, I know where it is, I can go assess a value. And now I'm back to your first question. Now I can measure that content and find which content is working, and I can use that information for my next campaign.
Wow, Mr. Matt. Mr. Matt, would you allow us with one last question?
Absolutely, sure.
I don't want to ignore Miss Sarah Abdullah's question right here, and I might add to it a little bit to make the picture more clear. She says that people are obsessed about impressions, individuals and businesses, and if this would change in the future. I think, please correct me if I'm understanding this right, but I think what Miss Sarah is talking about, that when a message is conveyed, people are more, the sender is more worried about how do they feel about the message, do they like it or not, than did they understand it, and was it conveyed to the right people. I mean, traditional media nowadays is, I don't like the state of the current media, because you issue a press release, all right, locally and internationally, it fulfills the target that you've aimed for. But then again, you are targeting a certain criteria of people, and you want to make sure that they understood that message. But you've, how do I say this? That message went through a diet plan, and it lost some essential aspects. They might be a lot in detail, but it's all because you focused on the impression, then actually focused on conveying that message. Will this change in the future, and how? I think this is what Ms. Sarah's talking about.
Yeah, so this is why I do what I do. People have been consumed with what I would call top level, top of funnel data. And that's visits, impressions, and that's the thing. An impression is just a metric. As you pointed out, it does not mean that it was understood or it was acted on. It is the most top level metric. And that's part of what I'm trying to do, is educate people that if you know what an impression is, you won't be happy with it. Because an impression just means it showed on the page. We don't even know if people saw it. It just means it showed up on the page. And so it's so top level. It's so top of funnel. As you mentioned, it doesn't give us an insight as to people saw it, understood it, acted on it. We don't know. All we know is that it showed somewhere to something. We don't even know if it was a human or a bot sometimes. So, we've got to drive into more meaningful metrics. And that's, like I said, that's why I do what I do. And I'm hoping that we can move beyond this and get better as marketers and drive to those meaningful metrics that show that we made a difference.
Mr. Matt Bailey, if you have a son and daughter, they are lucky to be drinking the juice of your experience on every day. The fact that you are an educator in the New Media Academy here in Dubai, I think it is not fair to have only this NFINITALKS with you. I'd be more than happy to enroll as a student under that experience of yours. I would like to say thank you very much for joining this live session on NFINITALKS, brought by Infinity 8 Dubai. And I'd like to thank our distinguished audience of ladies and gentlemen, the ones that are more than 1,000 watching us right now. Mr. Matt, just to be fair and square, is there anything you would like to relay in your profession, or for anyone aspiring to become an influencer or to bring about change in the media, but they don't know how to start? Anything you'd like to share with them?
I cut out a little bit on the end of your question, but I think I know where you're going.
Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, I have enjoyed. I've been to Dubai now a few times, and the last time I was there for a number of weeks working with the New Media Academy. And I have to say, the talent level of the students, of the people I have met, it's been amazing. I have thoroughly enjoyed every moment of my time. And honestly, I can't wait to be out there again. So I'll start by saying that if you want to get started, I would tell you right now, don't just look at, for example, don't just look at Instagram. Part of what we're teaching in the course is it's not just your presence on social media. How else are people going to find you? And then how are you going to, let's be honest, make money? What are you going to do? And so a lot of times, and this is not just in the UAE, it's all over the world, and I'm teaching people, they see, I'm going to go to Instagram and I'm going to make money. And I have to point out, okay, going on Instagram is step 1. Making money is step 5. We have steps 2, 3, and 4 that we need to deal with, and that is, what are you going to sell? Where are you going to send people? And what are they going to buy? So it's part of thinking through an entire business approach. What do people want? What's going to make them choose you? And then it'll make it easier for you. If you want to be a content creator, it'll be easier for brands to build a relationship with you when they know what you are about and where you're positioning yourself, and what makes you different. So building a structure and building a presence beyond just Instagram. Yeah, it involves building a website and thinking about how are you going to engage people and build an audience that's yours. From that next level of those that are not just creating content, but they are building relationships with brands and being paid to be spokespeople.
Mr. Matt, ladies and gentlemen, there are over 9,000 languages registered in the United Nations. All of their alphabets are not enough to phrase a thank you well-deserving of you, Mr. Matt, and of our distinguished doctor. My name is Yusuf Abdulbari. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Matt, on NFINITALKS, right here, brought to you by Infinity8, a digital marketing and advertising solutions company based in Dubai. Stay tuned with us. Make sure you give us a follow and a subscribe if you want to follow on more very beneficial NFINITALKS. Thank you very much, Mr. Matt, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Yusuf. It's been a pleasure.